Hello, my name is Lauren Pigott, and this is a presentation about Louis Armstrong Park in New Orleans. Named after the world-famous jazz performer, Louis Armstrong Park occupies 32 acres of land in the historic Treme neighborhood. A point of contention for some since its very beginning, today Louis Armstrong Park is the site of many events in the city and is a beautiful place to relax away from the bustle of the French Quarter in downtown New Orleans. In 1966, construction of I-10 destroyed Claiborne Avenue and displaced hundreds of mostly African American residents in the Treme. But gentrification began even earlier when the historic Treme market was demolished in the 1930s. Each following decade saw more demolition and displacement of Black residents. Plans to build a cultural complex resurfaced in the 1960s, and the neighborhood now home to Louis Armstrong Park was demolished. After years of delays, the park opened in 1980 and was chosen to be the New Orleans Jazz National Historic Park by the National Park Service in 1994. Although Congress has granted $3 million for restoration of the park, the four historic buildings there are unoccupied and falling into disrepair today. Facing backlash from the community over the lack of repair for the historic places in the park, in 2014, the park superintendent denied that the Park Service had lost interest, instead insisting that they had no money in their budget and that they needed to get creative to find funding. However, in 2018, the National Park Service ended its lease. The acting superintendent at that time said that the Park Service will focus on remaining jazz park facilities, the National Jazz Museum, and the Louisiana State Museum in the French Quarter, continuing the long tradition of prioritizing the famous tourist district over the Treme. On the west side of the park lies Congo Square. Congo Square has been a gathering place for African and indigenous peoples since the 1740s, when enslaved people would gather on their one day off each week, Sundays. Native Americans considered the area to be holy ground and celebrated their corn feast here. African people gathered and shared their music and song and traded wares for generations. Music and dance served as a form of resistance for the minorities who were socially degraded even as they began to form the city's culture. Today, musicians still gather in Congo Square for drum circles, a practice revived by locals some 30 years ago. The square was also a place of worship for African and Native people. The mixture of their religions and New Orleans Catholicism led to the evolution of the Voodoo religion, now a source of major revenue for the tourism industry of New Orleans. Congo Square now holds numerous cultural events and festivals such as the Treme Creole Gumbo and Congo Square Rhythms Festivals and New Orleans Juneteenth Festival, and serves as a meeting place for various cultural organizations and the Mardi Gras Indians. Today, visitors and locals can enjoy Louis Armstrong Park by taking one of the many tours offered, which showcase the history of the park and surrounding Treme neighborhood, attending the festivals held in the park throughout the year, or simply by visiting. There are duck ponds, statues, and beautiful oak trees and gardens to enjoy and relax in. There are hundreds of bars, restaurants, and cafes on all sides of the park and a historic cemetery nearby. The importance of Louis Armstrong Park cannot be denied as a fascinating look into the evolution of the culture of New Orleans and how people truly shape the city that they occupy.